Hey, do you like to play games? Well, I guess it all depends on what you mean when we say playing games. Now, if we're talking about playing cards or board games with young children, sure, I like to do that. Sign me up, I'll do that all day long. Or let's suppose it's New Year's Eve and you're in the living room with a group of friends and you're going to play games while you're passing the time. Yeah, that's a lot of fun and I enjoy that. Now, if you live with a narcissist, narcissists like to play games too, but I think you can figure out that their type of games are much different. They like to play psychological mind games with you. They must be in control. They must remain dominant. They must remind you that you just don't have what it takes to be as enlightened as, well, they are. And so they're constantly setting you up for poor reactions so that they can come back and tell you how you just are an inadequate individual. Now, one of the favorite games that narcissists like to play is gotcha. Here's how it goes. Let's suppose that you're just minding your own business, trying to engage with them and get along with them okay, and then they start criticizing you. They tell you how you're doing things wrong and you don't know what you're talking about. And so let's suppose you just try to be real patient and gentle in your response and you let it go. Well, they just keep it up and they continue with the agitation and the irritability, and more things come along that you say and do and they find fault in it. And again, you try to keep your composure. Well, the accusations and the agitation and the griping and grumbling still comes your way, and finally you blow and you say, shut up, I hate it when you talk to me this way. I can't stand being treated like this. You just got to quit. And the narcissist may have a real smug look on their face at that point and say, now, how am I supposed to get along with somebody that has such a bad temper like you do? Gotcha. That's the game they like to play. You know, one of the problems that people will talk about when they discuss with me in the therapist office about living with narcissists is they can have a building and increased sense of frustration and resentment. It's like no matter what I do, no matter how adequate of a person I am, the narcissist is always on my case and they're always agitated. Now, chances are that the narcissist has a whole lot of anger issues, griping and shouting and criticizing, those kind of things. But the person on the receiving end of it doesn't have the permission to have any kind of emotion like that. And so these people who live with the narcissist can have a building anger on the inside that comes out in the form of resentment and bitterness and futility and desperation. Sometimes people will say, well, I don't know if I get angry, I just feel frustrated. Well, frustration's a form of anger too. Do you know what it's like to have that kind of frustration on the inside of you when you live with a narcissist? We're going to be talking about that in this video. Now, before we get any further, I would like to make you aware that below the video here, there are going to be a couple of links for a couple of books that I'd like you to be aware of. One is by me. It's entitled, When Pleasing You is Killing Me, and the subtitle is Setting Boundaries with the Controllers in Your Life. And the other book is The Ugly Love by Laura Carranza, and its subtitle is A Survival's Guide to Narcissistic Abuse. So I think you'll find those to be very good for your library, and I hope you get a lot of good use out of them. In addition, we'd invite you to subscribe to our channel because we're going to have more videos pop up from time to time on the subject of narcissism. Now, let's get back to this whole notion of your angry response to the narcissist. You see, my question is, do you have a game plan in the way that you want to respond to the narcissist when they play that gotcha game? When that anger builds on the inside of you, what are you going to do? Now, too often, most people have the notion that says, well, if I can just get that other person to start acting right, then I'll quit feeling angry. And that's not a very good game plan because you see, one of the key ingredients of narcissists is they don't take input well. They're not team players. It's all about them. And so if you think that you're going to be able to speak with them in a way that's going to result in high coordination, think again because it's likely not going to happen. So what I'd like to do is I'd like for you to think through the mindset that you can have so that you can manage your anger well, knowing full well that the narcissist is not going to help you at all. And I first want us to get an idea of what we're talking about when we use the term anger. Exactly what is anger? What's its purpose? What's its function? And then I want to talk with you about options you have as you go about trying to use it in a proper kind of way. Now, let's keep in mind that most people don't get angry when things are going well. I don't get angry when people are helpful or friendly or kind or cooperative or understanding. In fact, I'm probably going to have a lot of peace in a moment like that. You get angry when people are harsh or negative or not understanding or critical or grouchy or not available emotionally. The anger starts building on the inside of you, and we want to pause right there and ask, so what's going on inside of that person who's feeling angry in that kind of moment? Well, if you look carefully, you'll see that anger is tapped into your sense of self-preservation. In fact, we can even say that anger is your emotion of self-preservation. And when you're feeling angry, you're wishing to preserve one of three primary ingredients on the inside. First, you're trying to preserve your sense of worth. If you're feeling angry towards the narcissist, you're wishing to say, would you please show me respect? Treat me like a decent person. Or second, in your anger, you're wishing to preserve your legitimate needs. Hey, I've got needs. Please acknowledge them, recognize them. Go with me on that, will you? Or third, in your anger, you're wishing to preserve your fundamental convictions. In other words, your anger can be your way of saying, I have certain beliefs that I don't want to back down on. So that becomes my foundation for defining anger. Anger is the emotion of self-preservation in which you're wishing to preserve your worth, your needs, your convictions. Now, when we put it in a context like that, anger actually can have a reasonable function. Most people think of anger as being an awful, nasty emotion, and usually it is based on the way people use it. But at its base, it has a positive function if it's managed properly. And that's the key that you want to try to figure out how to do. Manage your anger properly as opposed to letting the narcissist set your pace in the way that you manage your anger. Now, I mentioned you have choices. When you feel angry, you have 5 different options with respect to how you're going to handle the anger. And let me just run through each one of these options. First, you can be suppressed. You can suppress your anger. You can hold it in, keep it to yourself, just decide that you don't have anything to say, you don't want to go anywhere with it, and just contain the anger and just say hardly anything about it. Now, dealing with a narcissist, that can seem like a good strategy. Actually, narcissists can suppress their anger too, but their suppression of anger tends to be for different reasons. They may hold their anger in because they're waiting for a time to, or they're actually using it in a power play and they're just waiting for a time to manage yourself poorly so they can play that gotcha game. But the person on the receiving end of the anger of the narcissist is usually suppressing because of fear. It's like, oh, I can't afford to let my real self be known, and so they hold in and they try to put a smile on their face, or at best try to be at least somewhat cooperative, or try not to let it get to them too much. And it creates a type of phoniness. You know, when someone comes along and says, are you doing okay? And you say, yeah, I guess so. Well, no, you're not. You actually wind up trying to be somebody that you're not, and it's not a very good way of managing your relationships, suppressing the anger and just letting it turn into a sour disposition. A second option you have when you feel angry is to be openly aggressive. Now, when people tend to think of the emotion of anger, it's the open aggression that they tend to think of most. Aggressive anger means that you're wishing to stand for your worth, your needs, your convictions, but at the other person's expense. And when you come across in an openly aggressive way, then it can yield characteristics like blaming and shaming and harshness and abruptness and criticism and open argumentativeness, things like that. Now, obviously, the narcissist is going to be a master at this. They tend to be very strong in their aggressive tendencies, and they have no inhibitions about telling you how sorry of an excuse of a human being you are. And sometimes you can get caught up in that fray. You can just exchange insult for insult, and in doing so, you get into a war of words and a battle of wills, and you lose. So aggressive anger is an option in trying to respond to the narcissist, but it's not a very good option. A third option you have when you feel angry is to go the passive-aggressive route. If aggressive anger means that you're standing for your worth, your needs, your convictions at someone else's expense, then we put the term passive on the front of it. Then we say that you're being aggressive but in a quiet behind-the-scenes way. The silent treatment and withdrawal and evasiveness and things like that. And passive aggressiveness means that you're showing your disdain but in a slippery kind of way. You're not very accountable. Well, narcissists can do that to you all day long, and it's very much driven by their sense of contempt for you. Your passive aggressiveness is probably driven by the fact that maybe yelling doesn't work, but maybe if you can avoid them and just not cooperate with them, that'll tell them something, but it usually doesn't work. Now, it's the next two options I want you to be aware of so that you can manage your anger more properly. A fourth option you have is the option of assertiveness. Now, many times people think assertive means that you can just say whatever you want. If they don't like it, that's just their tough luck. Well, assertive anger is not that. It means that you're standing for your worth, your needs, your convictions, while also showing respect and regard for the other person involved. Now, when it's a narcissist that you're feeling angry at, you don't really feel much respect, but sometimes you just need to go ahead and be dignified and calm in the way that you manage your anger so that you don't get caught up in their pathology. And so right here, your tone of voice, you don't have to be harsh, you don't have to be mean and condescending, but you can be firm. How good are you at being firm and saying to the narcissist, this is who I am. This is what I believe. These are my convictions. These are my terms and how I'm going to deal with you. That can be hard because I have people say to me all the time, well, Dr. Carter, I try to be assertive and then they just push back and it doesn't seem to work. Let's keep in mind that assertiveness can work not because the other person agrees, but assertiveness works because you're standing up for yourself and you don't have to have their agreement. You can be firm, you can follow through on your decisions, you can live according to your convictions, and if the narcissist doesn't like it, stand up for yourself anyway, and then when they tell you how awful of a decision you are making, you can say, I understand that's how you feel, but I'm going to go ahead and live the life in the way that I think is most appropriate. That would be part of your assertiveness, and sometimes it means that you set stipulations, you establish boundaries, what you will do and what you won't do. That's your assertiveness with the narcissist, and when you're doing the assertiveness, at least you're recognizing that even if that person is not being cooperative, you're living your truth, and that's part of the way that your anger can mobilize you towards something that's right and healthy and good. Not easy because, again, they won't cooperate with you, but you have to kind of individualize this thought. And then the fifth and final option you have with your anger is to be smart enough to know when to release it. Sometimes when you're assertive, there's only so much that you can say or do, and then at some point you have to decide, well, do you want to stay in a flustered and agitated and irritable state of mind in perpetuity? And sometimes releasing the anger means that you're going to forgive or you're going to tolerate or you're going to show patience and recognize that you just can't let anger just reside on the inside, so you move on to what I call higher priorities, patience and goodness and those kinds of things. Now, the bottom line is this. The narcissist guaranteed is going to have plenty of anger issues. They're going to have all sorts of things that are going to make them agitated, annoyed, and they're not going to be bashful about letting you know what's going on inside of their emotional disposition. You too are going to have some anger in your responses to that person, but as I mentioned in this video, you have options with respect to how you're going to manage yourself, and I'm hoping that you can decide that there is an element of self-preservation that you can and should tap into, not because you're trying to change the narcissist, but because you're trying to stand firmly for who you are. You do have worth. You do have legitimate needs. You do have convictions that need to be heard. You can stand on that and then live according to the consequences or live according to the repercussions of what those decisions will be. And if the narcissist doesn't like it, that's on them. But it's up to you to determine how you're going to handle your emotions. And then if you're going to stay with the narcissist, you're going to have to decide if there are enough other elements inside that relationship that warrant the relationship to continue on. That's a tough one. But at the end of the day, when you feel angry, when they're playing that gotcha game with you, keep in mind you have choices. You're not required to just go straight down the tubes with inappropriate anger. It's up to you.